Causes of the Great Depression, Chapter 25, The Great Depression. Everything in the 1920s is really leading up to this moment in history. The stock market crash, and of course, Black Tuesday and the Great Depression. So we have our seemingly prosperous 20s ending with the stock market crash. The thing is, the preceding 2 years before this, the market had hit record highs. A lot of this was stimulated by optimism and easy credit, but there had also been a lot of speculators and manipulators of the stock market. So October 29th of 1929 is going to be dubbed Black Tuesday. On this day, panicked investors dumped their stocks and basically they wiped out the previous year's gains in one day. Virtually overnight, confidence in the economy disappears. This slide is going to continue, and the market actually doesn't hit its lowest point until July of 1932. And so you have to imagine not just one day of the economy sliding down, but it continuing on from October 29th, 1929, sliding down until July of 1932. And this is when the nation sinks into the Great Depression. But here's the thing. The stock market crash did not cause the Great Depression. It marks the beginning of the Great Depression, but it's not the cause of it. Really, what causes the Great Depression is all these weaknesses in the economy during the 20s leading up to this moment. I'm going to get into all these causes. The thing is, if you just go search the internet for things like, did the stock market cause the Great Depression? Most of the time it says yes, but it's more complicated. However, the issue is, imagine 6 dominoes falling over and knocking over one domino. The 6 dominoes are really what causes the Great Depression. And they knock over that one domino that is the stock market crash. And so it's a symptom of these issues, really more so than anything else. Now, does the stock market crash make the depression worse? Yes. It marks the beginning. It makes it worse, especially for individuals as well. But you can't just say it causes it. So what actually did cause the Great Depression? So let's go through all of these. The first problem is the unequal distribution of wealth and income. So we're seeing that even though there's this increase in industrial productivity and corporate profits, wages had fallen behind that. And so in 1929, the richest 0.1% of Americans had the same amount of income as the bottom 42%. And this is a really big issue because basically that means there's not enough money in circulation, and therefore that bottom 42% doesn't have enough purchasing power to maintain the economy. Because if one person has as much money as 420 people, that one person cannot spend as much as 420 people because they're going to purchase, each of them are going to purchase, a phone, and each of them are going to purchase a TV, and each of them are going to purchase and yada, yada, yada. Whereas that one person might buy more than one individually. They cannot literally spend as much as that other 42% of the population, basically. And so this is a huge issue because it means people aren't buying enough items basically to maintain the economy. Now, the second issue that really is going to cause the Great Depression is oligopolies. They're the ones dominating the industry. And so giving you an example by numbers, in 1929, 200 companies controlled half of the corporate wealth in America. The thing is, you need competition because this determines supply and demand. But without competition, a lot of these companies are, on one hand, really efficient. So that should mean that the items, prices that they're making goes down. But instead, they're going to keep prices artificially high, have so-called administered prices. The third problem was weaknesses in certain industries. So we were already seeing some of these industries during the 20s kind of failing, and so it's going to be even worse by this point. This is going to be things like agriculture, coal, and textiles, where we're just seeing like overproduction means a decline in the prices, and a lot of these industries are basically in heavy debt. On top of that, a lot of these industries are going to try to mechanize. And when you get mechanization in a lot of key industries, that actually leads to more unemployment because they don't know as many people. And so we're seeing slowly more and more people lose their jobs, partly due to mechanization during the 1920s. And so this really means the economy is dependent on a few industries when it comes to expansion and employment. The fourth problem here is going to be banking. Basically, banking was poorly managed, it's poorly regulated during this time period, and so this is all contributing to that instability of prosperity and threatening to spread panic and depression. You could say banking, very much like the stock market crash, is kind of ends up having a symptom and making the Great Depression worse. It is a cause, though, because banks are going to be really careful about who they invest in. And if they had invested in more startup companies and things like that, that would have put more money in circulation, given more people purchasing power. And so that's how they end up causing the Great Depression, is by not doing those kinds of things. Then the next problem was an international issue. So this is tying in America with the rest of the world, but specifically Europe more than anywhere else. Americans aren't buying European goods during the 20s, partly due to the high tariffs that are being set up. The problem with this is that Europeans were basically relying on American investments to help manage their debts and reparation payments from World War I. And so when Americans aren't buying items from Europe, cash flow into Europe is drying up. And so this is going to, first of all, make the Depression a global issue, but then in turn, Europe will put tariffs on on American goods. And so this curtails imports of American goods. And so then in turn, it's basically hurting the American economy back. And you have to keep in mind that these European governments are going to have to default on their debts because they don't have money coming into their government to pay back the debts. And a lot of those debts they owed to the United States. So it becomes cyclical in nature. And so exports are going to drop during the Great Depression in America because other nations can't buy from America either, because America is not investing in other nations. And then the sixth problem really ties into all of these: government policy. The thing is, the government failed to enforce antitrust laws, and that is what caused the oligopolies, which then in turn causes the high prices. The government failed to regulate banking and the stock market, causing issues. They reduced tax rates on wealthy, which contributes to the maldistribution of income. The government had opposed labor unions and collective bargaining, and so all of that had made wages stay low, and thus purchasing power was low. The government was the one who put in charge big high tariffs, and they had no kind of effective agricultural policy. And so this had inhibited foreign trade, reduced markets, hurt farmers. And then even if you go down to the state and local level, you're seeing that there's an expansion of government in that they want to establish public education and road construction. But to pay for these things, they actually had to have higher property taxes. And so what we're seeing is basically taxes at the state and local levels were rising faster than personal income during the 1920s. So all of these things come together, and really the crash is just going to expose all of these weaknesses in the economy. Businesses lose confidence and they refuse to make investments that might have helped. Banks are going to start calling in their loans and restricting credit, and if they had continued to give credit and help people establish businesses and things like that, that could have helped bring, once again, that purchasing power back in. Depositors scared about the failure of banks are going to try to withdraw their savings. And this means that basically banks aren't being paid back all of the loans that they're owed. And then depositors trying to take out money means that there's just a lack of cash, meaning that banks are going to fail. And this hurts the economy further. And it doesn't help either that the Federal Reserve Board is going to restrict the money supply, making the depression even longer. So I ask you this, true or false? The stock market crash caused the Great Depression.